Welcome to the Real Talk Real Estate Podcast. Today, we are interviewing Mauricio Ramos. He has been a full-time entrepreneur and investor since 2016. He currently controls over $2 million in real estate assets. He has sponsored 2 syndications and invested over 234 units across Texas. And one of my favorite things about him is he's a Star Wars fan, which we always love Star Wars, but we can maybe get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to know, Mauricio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Clayton, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Excellent. So where are you chatting us from right now? We're in Pittsburgh.
I'm in San Antonio, Texas right now.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about how did you get to here today? Well, what's your real estate journey? Our audience is dying to hear.
Totally. Thanks for the space. So my name is Mauricio Ramos. I'm 34 years old. I currently live in San Antonio with my wife, Dominga. I am from Mérida, Yucatan in Mexico. I grew up in Matamoros, which is also in Mexico. It's in the border with South Texas. I came to the U.S. for school, for college. I graduated as a civil engineer here from Texas A&M University and worked in the construction industry for 10 years as a project manager. Did multiple projects, multi-million-dollar projects in South Texas and in San Antonio as well. Did high schools, college campuses. We did hospitals, some public work for the Via Metropolitan system, which is the bus system here, and the public transportation system here in San Antonio, and other large projects. Also inside USAA, which is a large bank. They have a headquarters here in San Antonio, so we did some work inside there as well.
So the majority of your experience was thinking about big projects, thinking about big commercial deals. I wonder how that has impacted you. Did you see during this time period, you're overseeing big projects, multi-million-dollar projects. At some point, when did the time click that you say, oh, wow, I don't want to be just a manager. I want to start investing into stuff like this?
Totally. Great question. So at the beginning, I didn't. I mean, I would wonder, how much the owner of this project would make, and how much. But it was just completely out of my imagination. I would just wonder about it, but never really saw or knew how it worked. In my family, there's pretty much no real estate education at all. Mm-hmm. My dad, worked for the longest time. He went to school in Mexico, and he worked in banks, and now he works in insurance. And I mean, he's done pretty good, but always, kind of trading time for money for the most part. So that was my education, and that's what I grew up seeing. So when I reached that poor dad, just like most people, right? That's when it really clicked in my mind. It's like, okay, it has to be another way, right? Also, backing up a little bit, a few years in the middle, probably about 5 years into, probably 6 years into my construction career, I met some people that were really into traveling, and I really wanted to travel, and I was a little tired about construction, and I quit my job. I just quit construction and started traveling for 6 months. I went to Europe backpacking, and then I traveled throughout Mexico, throughout the US. And actually, and then I'd come to a point where I ran out of money, right? So I didn't have any better education or any passive income coming in. So I ran out of money, and I went back to work with the same company. So they hired me again. But the thing that I figured doing that was I met so many people traveling, and they were still making money. And I was like, there has to be there's no other way. There's no way that these people, they all go back to work and save money and then come back out to the world. There's no way. They have to be doing something else that allows them to keep traveling and not run out of money, right? And I didn't know what it was. And I ran into a few things. I found day trading, and I was interested in day trading probably for about a year. And it's good, right? I wasn't very good at it. So I realized that it's, to a point, it's also trading money or trading time for money.
Right.
So it wasn't necessarily passive. So I realized that wasn't my thing, and I kept on traveling and on working. And that's when I found, through one of my interns in construction, that's when I found real estate, and then started reading about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I learn about real estate and the passive income and the rentals, it's like, this is it. This is how you can continue, go have a life, and people pay you rent. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you can have some money left, and you don't have to be at work every day for the rest of your life, right?
That sounds good to me. And my question is, there's a lot of people that read that Purple book, and most of the people in our community have read it, and they kind of attribute that is the impetus for me getting into real estate and feeling really passionate about it. But there are so many people that read the book and they don't do it. What caused you to take action on the book and to start going after it? Because it's not easy. We're in a hot market. What caused you to do that?
Well, I knew I didn't want to be an employee the rest of my life. And, I had some coworkers, great guys, great mentors, throughout my construction career. But I would see these like 60 plus, 70 plus year old guys that were still working, right? And they couldn't get out of the job because they needed the money, because of this, because of that. It's like, there's no way that I'm going to get that old and I'm going to have to be working. I have to do something right now before, I get to a point where I cannot, right? I have to take action now, because I do not want to I refuse to be working at that age. Also, another kind of small or dream that I've had is I didn't want to have to tell. I don't have any children right now, but my wife and I are working on that. So hopefully soon we'll start growing the family. But did I say my girlfriend, my wife, my wife? So I refused to the fact that I would have to tell my daughter or son, hey, sorry, I cannot go to your recital or to your game because I have to go to work. There's no way. I refuse to that idea. I mean, I will be there as long as I'm healthy and I'm alive. I will be there, right? So those were the things that I have to take action on, what I'm learning in those books and podcasts and seminars that I've been to.
That's very interesting, because one of a person I really look up to is Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins always talks about how in order to make a decision, decisions shape our lives, but a decision is all based on really moving toward pleasure or moving away from pain. It seems like moving away from pain was significant enough for you to feel like, wow, like this is important. So now you have this in your mind, you're moving away from pain. Could you tell us about a deal that you've had? I love to kind of deep dive this deal. And so our listeners can get the most out of it.
For sure. So I'll talk about a 16-unit deal that we've syndicated. So this is not my first multifamily deal, but this is my first syndication. Mm-hmm. So this is a 16-unit apartment complex that my business partner Adrian and I bought in McAllen, Texas. This is South Texas. We bought it for $570,000. We got under contract a few weeks before, after, I can't remember exactly, but a few weeks before after I quit my job last year in 2018, we had it under contract, and we closed on it January 2019, this year. So we've repositioned that property. So far, the business plan has been good. I'll go back a little bit to the acquisition and to the loan terms. So we bought it for $570,000. We raised about $160,000 for down payment and closing costs and rehab money, and a little bit of an acquisition fee that we got. We got a loan on it. It's a recourse loan because of the amount of the debt. And this was a 20% down, 80% levered, 7% interest. And I'm trying to remember the 30-year AM, 5-year term. So it was definitely, the projection is to be 9 to 10% cash on cash return average, throughout the life of the investment. And our investors are supposed to double their money at the end of the project. So
just so we can give some context to our listeners, can you kind of give us a timeline? Because people think that real estate, especially getting into multifamily real estate, it's going to happen overnight. How long did it take from you finding the product to finding it, to sending in an LOI, to getting it closed? How long was that period?
So we got this property through a postcard. Oh. That's how we found it. Yeah. So probably the seller got this postcard around, I'd say, in August, maybe. So it took August, September, and October, just working with the seller, negotiating back and forth, go see the property, to agree on a price, $570. And then, so we got into contract in October, and then we closed in January. So about 3 months to close, and then, good 2 to 3 years to reposition and then enjoy some cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if if you reach out, that's 6 months, that's 6 months. It's not like I'm going to find this property, although we all wish this would happen, and close it in 30 days. Like most residential properties, we're talking commercial multifamily. So it could take 6 months to a year. I mean, 3 months with negotiating with a guy. At that time, was that all? You sent an LOI and you had it under contract and you were just kind of ironing out the details there?
With the negotiation?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Yeah, so you sent the LOI in August, September, in that you had that period, the 90 days or the 60 days to negotiate with them.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Pretty much. It was like, all right, let me go back, talk to my wife. And then, a week later, all right, I talked to my wife and this is what happened. And all right. And then me and my business partner, we would get together, get back with him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went.
So did you have the money? Did you have the syndication lined up before you had the deal, or were you kind of figuring out as you went?
Yeah. So I'm that kind of guy. I kind of figure out things as I go. I don't have everything figured out. I'm more of a, one of the green lights is green. One of the lights is green, just go. And then when the next light turns green, then you keep going. And then you figure it out as you go. So no, I did not have, I was in conversations with a few investors about what I was doing. Like I said, this is my first indication, but not my first deal. So on my previous deals, I shared some of the returns and how I was doing with some of the investors or potential investors. So some of them were kind of like ready to say, hey, when you find the next deal, let me know. I'll look into it and we'll see. I mean, I'll be interested in investing with you. So I put together a little investor package and I presented it to my investors, and then we found the money. And we were able to close on it. But for the most part, I figure it out as I go.
Green light, let's go.
Yeah.
I love that. So that goes to show you that, if you put your mind to it and you have a track record, that you can kind of keep the ball rolling, and you have investors, but you talk to them beforehand. So it was all good. Tell me a little bit about, and we'll just touch on this briefly, your first deal. And I want to highlight this because a lot of people now are aspiring to get in. How did you find the first deal? And kind of, did brokers take you seriously? How did you kind of build that rapport with brokers?
So actually my first interaction with brokers was, my first actual interaction with brokers was selling my 10 unit, which was my first deal. Everything else that I've done has been off market. I just find that there's less competition there. Prices are more negotiable and more accessible when you're dealing with off market. So didn't really have to talk to brokers, but I definitely know what you're saying about, I see what you're saying about, they don't take you seriously. That's totally, most of the time that's what happens. So probably a good way to do it is go do some deals on your own off market. And then that way you can put some deals under your belt, and then you can talk to brokers, and it's not like, oh, this is the very first deals you've done. So
yeah. That is really interesting, because I've actually never heard of that. Most people say, hey, the brokers, they have all the deals. And it reminds me of saying, what is the least chartered path? And maybe go into that. Although it might not be as conventional, you did it. And obviously you're successful with 234 units in a short amount of time. That's awesome. Wow. That's, I hope all of our listeners are writing that one down. And I'm sure at the end, when we share your information, that they can ask you personally about that.
Sure.
So let's jump into the real talk, real estate lightning round. This is my favorite part of the show. So let's jump right into it. So what's your favorite real estate book?
I'd say, aside from Rich Dad Poor Dad, I would say Big Profits with Small Apartments by Lance Edwards.
Okay, Big Profits. And we'll put all these all in the show notes for anyone who's interested in it. What's been your biggest mistake in real estate, and how have you learned from it?
So two come to mind. When there was a point where, kind of like the shiny object syndrome. I had somebody in, here in San Antonio that I met and introduced Airbnb, and like how to be a host on Airbnb and how you don't have to own the house to Airbnb it out. And I put some money into it. And don't take me wrong, I did good and I'm still making money out of that, but it takes a lot of time and the return is not as good as, as if you're really investing in real estate. Having Airbnbs is having Airbnbs that you don't own the building. That's not real estate investing. That is just a cash flow machine. So I did a few of those, and I wouldn't say I lost my shirt, but it's not the best thing. So I kind of, it was probably a mistake going there just because it was like the shiny object. It's like, oh, okay, it's awesome. It's Airbnb. Let's try it. So that would probably be one. And then the other, recently I had a 28 unit property here in San Antonio under contract, and so the interest rate went up on me. Recently, Fannie and Freddie, for those, so this might be familiar to some people. Fannie and Freddie went up on their rates recently because they were reaching their caps for the year. So basically, hey, I'm done for the year. So whoever needs more product, I'm just going to put it more expensive. That's it. I'm just going to increase the price, and whoever wants it is going to buy it at a higher price. So it happened to me while I had this property under contract, and it went up so much that it wasn't a deal to me anymore, or at least I wasn't comfortable bringing people's money into the deal. So I let go with the deal. I walked away, and I lost some money. Some of the earnest money and some of the inspection money and some of the fees that you have to pay the lenders. So potentially I could have been a little stricter on my underwriting before going under contract. That's probably a lesson learned for me. So that was another kind of big mistake that I've had.
But not, that says a lot about you as an investor and as a steward of someone else's. Your investors are probably going to look at this and say, "Wow, like Mauricio really, he's willing to put his own money on the line to make sure that my hard-earned money is going to work for me." That says a lot about you, and that's a good lesson learned for a little bit at least you didn't, go all into the deal.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so what's your real talk best mindset tip?
Just don't wait until you have it all figured out. Just take action. Just go. I mean, just jump, and then you build the parachute your way down. Just do it. Just go. Don't wait too long. Don't think too much. Just go.
And lastly, what's the real talk reason why you're so passionate about real estate and real estate investing, particularly in multifamily?
Yes. So this allows me to have some freedom, or a lot of freedom to spend time with my family, and also to travel. I mentioned I've been to 20 countries around the world, and here shortly in October, I'm gonna probably less than a week out from this recording. I'm going to head out to Spain to see a friend of mine that lives in Spain. And then I'm going to continue and go to Middle East and go to India and come back for about 20 days. So, just the fact that I don't have to ask for the days off, right? I just have to tell my wife. But just the fact that I have that freedom, that is priceless to me.
So before I ask my last question, where can our listeners get a hold of you?
So I'm on Instagram as Mau RMS. So it's MAU-RMS. My webpage is demedicigroup.com, which is DEMEDICI group.com. Demedici, like the Italian last name. And my email address is mauricio@demedicigroup.com. We also have a meetup here in San Antonio, Texas, that it's held on every third Wednesday of the month, and it's the location changes. So just find us on meetup.com. Look for Multifamily Invest Differently, and you'll find us there. Sign up for it, and you'll see where the meetup is going to happen that month, and then hopefully you can join us.
Excellent. So what is every single person that I've spoken to, and every single real estate investor that I've ever, talked with there's one thing always that is different, that allows them to, maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a tip. What's the real talk tip that you can give to our listeners that you feel like has been the reason why you have been successful, just so they can have actionable advice to move forward after they listen to this?
So great question. So I think as far as me, so I'm from Mexico. I'm an immigrant to this country. I was always here with work visas and student visas and everything. Now that I'm married to my wife, I'm a resident. But knowing that this is most of the times is the mentality from any immigrant to this country. There's no way back. You just have to make it. You just have to continue, and you have to be successful. I see a lot of the people in this country, citizens of this country, like, well, if it doesn't work out, then I can just always go work at McDonald's, right? Or CVS. Not for us. We have to make it happen. We have to be successful. There's no way back. Burn the bridges, burn the boats, and you have to be successful. That's it. So I think for me, that's kind of the real talk tip of why I'm where I'm at.
Excellent. Mauricio, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. By the time we probably get this up, you will be in the Middle East or India, and I will be extremely jealous because 20 days is a long time. Thank you again, and thank you for all of our listeners. This is another Real Talk Real Estate Investing podcast show with Clayton Hepler.